watching Gearz.
Now, you're watching Gearz.
You know, one question that I get a lot is, when are you going to do a project on a late model car that's really fast and doesn't cost very much? Believe it or not, we jumped right into that project last week when I took a '95 Mazda Miata that I picked up for $2,500 and totally gutted out the drivetrain to make room for a hot V8. And that's why we're sitting here in a pile of Miata guts. Now, the response to this project has been phenomenal. I mean, I've got stuff like, very cool project, and can't wait to do it myself, and dude, you're insane. And of course, my favorite, oh man, you got me lusting after my sister's car, man, you're sick. This is great. Now keep in mind, the whole reason I'm showing you how to do this is so you can build a modern Shelby Cobra style car that will run with anything on the road, but utilizing an easily accessible, easily affordable car like the Mazda Miata. Because, I mean, everybody knows very few people can actually afford a real Cobra these days. Now, doing a project like this brings up an interesting problem. How do you take a car that's generally viewed as a girl's car and give it some balls? Well, you do it the same way that Carroll Shelby did back with the AC Ace. You stick in a V8 and you go racing. And that brings us up to where we are today. Now, the kit that we're using to do this swap comes from a place called Monster Miata, and it's designed around utilizing a late model fuel-injected Mustang engine. And this thing will make those cars really cook, but we're going to want more heat than this. So we are going to put in a 400 horse 302 that we got from Keith Craft Racing. This engine is stuffed with Mahle flat top forged pistons and Eagle H-beam rods. The heads are high-flowing Brodex aluminum heads, and they're packed with stainless steel valves, screw-in studs and guide plates, and of course roller rockers. Now on top, we kept it simple. We have a Wyand Stealth intake manifold and a Holley Street Avenger carburetor, topped off with their high-tech air cleaner. The best part is, all of the engines that come from Keith Craft Racing come with the dyno sheets and all the documentation, so you know you're getting exactly what you paid for. Now, this engine dynoed at 403 horsepower, 390 foot-pounds of torque, all packed into a nice, tight little package. Now, before you go ahead and just stick an engine into your project, you need to slow down a little bit here. You've spent a lot of time on your engine, a lot of time on your project. Don't just stick things in ugly. No, man, take the time to clean them up, paint them to make them look good. Now, the paint that I put on this engine is a metallic gold pearl that's a base clear. I mean, it's a real automotive paint. And I did that for a couple of reasons. First of all, it's extremely durable. Second of all, it just looks incredible. But if you don't want to go that far, just something out of a spray can will be great. That way, when you go to pop the hood for your buddies and show off the project, you'll be proud of it. Now, I know that you're wondering about this blue paint inside here. We're going to tell you about that when we get to that part of the project. Right now, we still need to dress this engine. Now, everybody knows that this is not a complete engine. I mean, there's no accessories on it, so we got to put something on there. Now, you can reuse all of this original stuff. It'll bolt right in place, the pulleys, the brackets, the accessories, but I'm telling you, the ugly factor on something like this is just huge. That system on this engine would just kill the looks of it. So, what are you going to do? Well, the answer came from a place called Zoop's Products in what they call the Positrack system. And just laying here on the table, it looks better than that old stock engine. Now, basically what it is a super compact, low-profile serpentine belt system. And you are not going to believe how easy it goes on. Now, the kit includes polished pulleys, billet brackets, a polished alternator, air conditioning compressor, power steering pump, And finally, a billet support bracket that's got the idler pulley. Now obviously this is a fantastic looking system with all the polished aluminum and the brackets and the components, but building a car is not just about making something look good. No, it's got to have a function to it. And I picked this system because of its size. Come here, take a look at this. Notice everything is back and nothing comes forward of the water pump. And then the sides, look how the sides are tucked in. Nothing comes outside of the heads. This is going to be perfect in that little tiny engine compartment. Matter of fact, if you're building a truck or a muscle car or a street rod and space under the hood is important, this is the only way to go. Now, for those of you that are thinking, oh, you know, that's great, but it's expensive and I'm on a budget and that's what I'm going to do. Well, that's valid. But let me ask you something. Are you really going to use a junkyard alternator and power steering pump and air conditioning compressor? No, you're not. You're going to end up going down to the local auto parts store and replacing that and that and that. And by the time you do all of that, you're going to end up with almost as much money in that as you would have in this. But you still have that, which makes doing it that way not as cheap as you thought. You know, there comes a time in every project when all the planning is done, all the prep work is done, and it's finally time to start putting the vehicle together. And this is a special time because this is where the vehicle starts to transform into what you envisioned it to be long before you started making a mess out in the garage. This is where it all starts to pay off. And that's where we are on the Banshee project, because it's time to stick the drivetrain into the car and prove to you guys that it's possible to stick a V8 into a Miata. Now, to actually physically mount a V8 in this car, you have two choices. You can either mount the subframe, drop the motor in from the top, and then assemble the clutch and the transmission on out in a traditional way, or you can assemble the whole drivetrain on the subframe on the ground, roll it under the car, and mount it from the bottom. Now, if you have access to a lift or just some way to get the front end of the car off the ground, this is the best way to do it. So that is what we're going to do. The first step is to mount the steering rack to the new subframe. Now, if it's questionable or your tie rod ends are bad, now's the time to replace them. Got your side? Now you can see how this monster Miata subframe and pan all work together with the steering. Now, it is tight, but it's all serviceable and all functional. Okay, with the engine on rollers and ready to go, it's time for the clutch and the flywheel. And for that, we went to Zoom because we want something that's going to perform and something that's going to last. Now, the flywheel is this super cool aluminum flywheel that only weighs 12 pounds. And this is going to allow that engine to wind like crazy. It's also going to lessen a little bit of that low-end torque so I don't just blow the tires away every time I launch it. If you're going to run a road course, that is a great setup. Now, the clutch is just as cool because it features Kevlar friction material. Now, the reason Kevlar is cool is that it grips better and it lasts longer than the conventional stuff. The only drawback to using Kevlar is it has a longer break-in period, about 700 miles before you can really romp on it. That's going to be tough. The bell housing came from the guys at Summit Racing, and it's this heavy-duty McLeod blow-proof bell housing. Now, the purpose of something like this is to contain the clutch should it ever blow apart in a racing or a high-performance situation, because the shrapnel from an exploding clutch can do some serious damage to you, not to mention what it'll do to the car. Now, if you're just building the car to run on the street, this is probably a little bit of overkill. I mean, you really don't need anything quite this heavy-duty. However, if you're going to be running down the track, this is not only a good idea, but it's usually required to pass a safety inspection. So make sure you're planning ahead here. Now, the only modification you're going to have to do to it is you're going to have to take the stock Miata slave cylinder and mount it on the bell housing to actuate the clutch fork. And of course the bracket from Monster Miata is included to do this. All right, what about a starter? Yeah, we got one. We got that little jewel from Tough Stuff Performance because they specialize in high performance components that look good. So it's gonna match what we're doing here. And it just slides right into the pocket. The last piece to this puzzle is the transmission. And what I've got here is a brand new T5 5-speed that we got from Summit Racing. And of course it's just gonna slide right into that bell housing and fit up perfect. Now, the reason that the T5 is such a perfect transmission for this swap is it's compact, lightweight, but it's strong enough to handle the 400 horsepower and 400 foot-pounds we're gonna be throwing at it. Now, just barely, but it is strong enough to handle that. Now, I know you're looking at all this stuff going, man, that's a lot of stuff. How's that all gonna fit in a car? Well, I promise you, if you hang with me here, I'm gonna show you how all this slides in with no cussing and no pounding with the BFH. Hey, you are just in time because this is it. This is the moment. We are just about to take a small block Ford V8 and a T5 5-speed and ram it down the throat of a tiny Mazda Miata and transform it from an anemic mall cruiser into a fire-breathing street machine. Why? Because this is Gearz. Now, I know some of you guys are thinking, oh, you know, even if it does fit, you're just gonna end up with a hacked up race car. No. The idea here is to show you how to build a car that is reliable enough to drive every day, but has enough power to smoke anybody at any time. But the real question is that going to fit in that? All you naysayers, step on back, because this is going in one way or the other. All right, with the subframe all bolted up, the engine's pretty much in, except for this cross member. Now to mount that, all you have to do is jack it into place, drill some holes, and bolt it up. And that's it, guys. The new drivetrain is in. Now, I know you're thinking, no way. There is no way that that just slid in that easy. There has got to be some clearance problems. What are you not showing us? Now, come here. Take a look at this. You've got all kinds of room around the transmission. You've got room around the slave cylinder. The blow-proof bell housing, I clearanced that before I put that in, so I know that was going to fit. But take a look at this. Here's your headers. Now, that is tight, but there's plenty of room, so when the motor rocks, it's not going to come up and hit the body. Everywhere you look, there is just enough room. It's tight, but I'll tell you what, it looks like it came from the factory in there. Okay, the engine is in place. The transmission is in place. What are we going to do about the rear end? I mean, how are we going to handle all that power? Well, the kit comes with a bracket to mount a new rear end. But to find the rear end that fits this bracket, you get to do a little bit of hunting. So we went down to our friends at Shrum Auto Salvage and picked up a rear end out of a late 80s, early 90s Ford Thunderbird. Now, I know what you're thinking. A 7.5? Isn't that kind of small? That's exactly what I thought. But the guys at Monster Miata assured me that the 7.5 and the CV joints are plenty strong enough to handle over 400 foot-pounds of torque. Matter of fact, they say they've even got guys running in the 10s with these and not scattering them all over the track. So we'll see. Now, one of the good things about using a 7.5 is all you got to do is clean it up, pull out the stock open differential, stuff in a limited slip differential from Ford Racing, and you're ready to go, because you definitely want both tires digging on something like this. Now, the mounting bracket is very simple. All you do is press these bushings out of the stock rear end, slide them in here, and go bolt this in.
If you're itching to get out and do something with your car or truck, fire it up and bring your family to one of the Gearz Autoramas. There will be cool vehicles, a silent auction, giveaways, and of course, a tour of the amazing Gearz shop with Stacey as he shares what goes on behind the scenes. You'll even get a chance to talk to him about what you're working on. So saddle up and put the pedal down to Nashville, Tennessee and the Gearz Autorama. For dates, times, and registration, go to the events page at staceydavid.com.
Hey, we're back and rolling down the final steps of putting a 400 horsepower V8 into that. Why? Well, basically to show you how to build a modern day Cobra out of one of the most popular, affordable, and easily accessible sports cars ever built, the Mazda Miata. The small block Ford engine and the T5 tranny, as well as the modified subframe, basically slid in and bolted up like they were made for the car. The rear end, out of an early 90s Ford T-Bird, fit just as well. Now all we have to do is mount the front of the rear end so it doesn't move around on us. And that is where this torque plate comes in, because it fits above the rear end. You weld it to the cross member, and then the rear end just bolts to it. All right, just got a couple of things to say. This is a welder, that is a gas tank. They make a beautiful explosion together, and you get to play a harp. Make sure you know your surroundings before you start torching. The last thing that we're going to deal with are the axles. And once again, we are using some new and used parts. Take a look at this. The outers and the CV joints are the Ford units that came from the junkyard. But we pulled out these weaker axles and slid in these stronger axles that came with the kit, giving us a much stronger assembly. Now to put this in, that end slides into the differential. This goes through the spindle and then into this modified Miata hub that also comes with the kit. And then you are ready to rock. And that gets all the major hurdles out of the way. The rear end and axles in place. The transmission and cross member in place. The subframe and the V8 in place. I told you a V8 would fit in this car. Now obviously we still have a cooling system to put on and the exhaust and the front suspension. And what about that blue paint I told you about? We're going to get to all that in later shows. I'm just out of time on this project for today. But wait, man, the show is not over. Sit down. Where are you going? What's the matter with you?
And now, Tool Tech, brought to you by Dake. If you have the dream, we have the tools.
On today's Tool Tech, we are dealing with cutting tools, ways to cut metal, because one of the main ingredients in your rig is metal. And if you don't know how to cut it, well, you're going to be limited in what you can do. Now, there are two basic types of metal in a vehicle. You got your thin stuff, your sheet metal, which bodies are made out of, and your shrouding, stuff like that. And then you have thicker stock and tubing. That frames are made out of that, and bracketry is made out of this. Now here's some of the tools out there to help you cut this. Now for sheet metal, your most basic are your hand shears. Now these are really nothing more than heavy-duty scissors designed for cutting sheet metal. Now the only trick here, of course, is to keep them sharp so you don't end up cussing them and chucking them across the room. A step up from that is the throatless shear. Now these are cool because they cut all kinds of nice curves and edges without distortion that you couldn't normally do with a hand shear. And then you have the air shear. Now, obviously, these are great for cutting big pieces of sheet metal quickly, accurately, and with no distortion. However, if you don't do a lot of sheet metal work, obviously you don't need something like this, but they're a lot of fun. Now, one last tool that is great if you're working sheet metal is called a nibbler. Now, a lot of people aren't familiar with this tool, but it is something that you want to have in your box. It is basically an air-powered punch, and it is extremely quick and maneuverable. This is great if you're cutting out old rusty floors, old fenders, quarter panels, someplace where you don't want to throw a bunch of sparks all over the shop.
And now, what are you working on?
Now it's time for What Are You Working On? This is where we feature one of you guys right off of the Gearz website and show people what you're working on. Now, the guy we're looking at today is Josh Musgrave. He's 16 years old and he's from Yuma, Colorado. Check him out. Look at him, man. He is ready to roll. I love it. Now, the vehicle that he's working on is exactly what he's standing in front of. It's a 1968 International Scout 800. Now, the truck is pretty much stock, according to Josh here. It's got the 266 International V8 in it. Man, take a look at this thing. For those of you that have never seen an International V8, there it is. Pretty cool. Here's a shot of him going into a ditch. Here's another shot of him coming up out of it, and it's just the vehicle he's got. It's not done yet, but he's out there using it, and that's what this is all about. Now, he does have some plans for it. According to Josh here, he wants to put in Dana 44s from a later Scout, do a spring over conversion, get it up in the air some. He's looking to put 33 to 35 inch tall tires on it. I would definitely recommend going with 35s. And his final statement is, my goal is to end up with something that I can build for a reasonable price, that's reliable and safe to take out on the weekends and have some fun with. I mean, that is what this is all about, man. Hats off to you, Josh. That's very cool. Now, if you've got a project that you'd like to have featured, I don't care what it is, car, truck, motorcycle, whatever, send in some stuff to the Gearz TV website. We'll take a look at it. Who knows? We'll try to get you on here. All right, you've seen what I'm working on. You know what Josh is working on. Now it's your turn. Get out there, work on something. We'll see you next week. All right, boy, come on.